Engagement with Asia matters because of the fact that we're part of a region, but we are part of a bigger part of the world.
We're in Asia geographically and now grow more so culturally. So Asia will be very important both now and into the future.
It's important for Australia to engage with Asia because we have 2/3 of the world's population in Asia. It's a young age group that is growing. It's a strong economy.
It's essential that we find ways to collaborate with our trans-regional neighbours, culturally, politically, artistically, and of course creatively.
Different cultures have different understandings of finance, different understandings of partnership. If we would just open our eyes to that, the opportunities are massive.
Asia capability is really important for people to have a strong grasp of if they want to enhance their relationships and friendships in the region. It's more than just culture, it's more than food, it's history, it's society, it's understanding what the people in those countries are facing every single day and walking a day in their shoes.
So we really need an inquiring mind, and we most importantly need to have humility and an understanding of how to build relationships.
I think it's the humility to learn, to experience, to really get an understanding of the beautiful cultures and religions that Asia has, and really embracing it in all its complexity and diversity.
I think there's different skills and capabilities required to effectively engage in the Asian market, but the two most important ones that I see is understanding local customs and understanding how to do business in the market of your choice. If you don't understand those things and you don't appreciate them, it can have a really big impact on your success.
It's really amazing that Asialink over 30 years has built a 1,200 person network who are capable in Asia. That's only going to be more important going into the future as we face more complexity. That we can rely on these friendships, the network and the links, not only in Australia but within the region.
The Asialink Leaders Program has been around for 30 years. There's 1,200 alumni. I'm a very proud alumni.
So being part of the Asialink network is a vital way of bringing people together from different disciplines with a leadership lens of togetherness, being united.
The Leaders Program has shaped curious and authentic leaders over the last 30 years, and I'm really proud to be amongst that network.
I think it's fantastic to be a part of this great group of people that are so passionate about Asia, interacting with Asia, building those relationships with Asia. But I would say we need thousands of people working on these relationships, and I think more needs to be done.
Hello and welcome to this information session on the 2026 Asialink Leaders Program. I hope you enjoyed that introductory video with some of our alumni. My name is Charlotta Oberg, or Lotta, and I'm the Asialink Leaders Program Director. I'll be looking forward to hosting the session with you and fellow speakers today. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians on all of the lands in which we come together virtually today. I pay my respects to the Gadigal of the Eora Nation, and I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander elders, past, present and future, and especially to those joining us in this session. So here at Asialink Business, Australia's National Centre for Asia Capability, we are currently putting together, creating the 31st Asialink Leaders Program and Cohort. So it's a really good time to be looking at this program that launches in 6 weeks. Together with my co-presenters today, we look forward to overviewing 3 things for you. And that is, firstly, the big picture. What is the backdrop and the context in which you're coming to the session and potentially looking at this program for? I look forward to overviewing the program's nuts and bolts, outcomes, inputs, and impact to build those capabilities that helps you succeed in this fast-changing region. And then we're fortunate to have one of our alumni join us to share a perspective from the region and also the experience of being in the program. And just before we kick off, I just want to get a little bit of housekeeping. This session is recorded. We cannot see you. You can see us, and you can see us again should you like, or you might be tapping into the recording. We also welcome your questions in the Q&A box, so not the chat box, the Q&A box throughout, and you should be seeing that at the bottom of the screen. We look forward to getting to those questions towards the end of the session, and we'll also give you the details should you want to ask those questions to us. Maybe we didn't get to them, or you have another question coming up. So with that, it is my pleasure to kick us off, or to start us with the big picture. And in fact, of course, we're going to have the acting CEO of Asialink Business do so. So Catherine Madford is going to share this perspective. She is someone with 15 years experience in the region and who is now leading our efforts to build an ever more Asia capable Australia. Over to you, Catherine.
Thanks, Lotta, and hello everyone. It's great to be with you. I know you are here because you are thinking about the Asialink Leaders Program in 2026, maybe for yourself or members of your team. So if I can dive right in, here at Asialink, the question of why Asia, why now, sits at our core, and it really is the red thread through the Asialink Leaders Program. Asia's not just our neighbourhood. It's the engine of global growth. And so the region is home to some of the fastest growing economies. It already accounts for half of the world's internet users and global consumption growth. And this economic shift is really underpinned by some pretty powerful demographic trends. Asia's home to more than 4.7 billion, over half the world's population. And the region's middle class is expected to reach 3.5 billion by 2030. I've lived and worked across Asia for the last 2 decades, and I continue to be astonished at the speed of transformation. You know, from the rapid deployment of AI across China, India, Singapore, to the rise of digitally empowered consumers, to unprecedented investment in energy transition and critical infrastructure. The pace, scale, and complexity of this kind of change will define Australia's economic future. As we start each year here at Asialink, we undertake a survey of leaders across Australia to understand the trends they see in Asia for the year ahead. This year's report, which will be published next week as we welcome in the year of the firehorse, reveals a really interesting insight. Leaders with direct experience in Asia see the region quite differently from those operating only domestically. Those already in market focus on practical realities, competition, regulation, rapid technological change, while those without Asia exposure tend to overestimate the risks and underestimate the opportunities. So that gap isn't in ambition, it's in capability. And in my work, I frequently meet leaders who understand the importance of the region, but underestimate the capability required to succeed. Success with Asia really does require leaders who are prepared, skilled, adaptable, curious. Being Asia capable demands a really deep understanding of local context, the ability to navigate diverse societies and cultures, and most importantly, a commitment to building long-term, meaningful relationships. And I guess to note that while Australia looks to Asia for future growth, we are not the only country doing that. This incredibly diverse region, evolving at tremendous speed, is attracting global attention. And so while Australia has much to offer, if we want to play a role in Asia's growth story across sectors like digital, energy, education, healthcare, cultural and people-to-people engagement, we need to invest in building the capability to unlock those opportunities. Those who join the Asialink Leaders Program each year do so because they're really driven to make a positive change in the way their organisations and sectors engage with Asia. So I'll finish with this point. Successful engagement with Asia isn't just for senior political leaders or diplomats. Each of you has a role to play in helping Australia navigate challenges and opportunities. Joining the Asialink Leaders Program will equip you to do that. Let me hand back to Lotta.
Thank you so much, Catherine. And it's a pleasure to do just that, to overview how the Asialink Leaders Program builds those key capabilities. This will be a snapshot, and more information is available on our website, which is popping into the chat shortly. The Asialink Leaders Program is unique in its kind. It is Australia's premier professional development program on Asia for leaders. And as you can see and I've heard, it builds on 30 years of success. So what that really means is that if you're joining the program, you can draw on this legacy in a way. The program has 3 decades of being at the center of Australia-Asia ecosystems. It has this tradition of actually looking ahead at what leaders need to be successful with the fast changing region. And of course, the third point, it has an incredible alumni network to draw on, of which 10% is currently in Asia. If you were to join us in 2026, you would come in and meet 50 like-minded Asia ambitious, Asia curious peers. And together you would take a learning journey that I'm going to overview at a high level. And the idea, of course, is that together you develop this expertise, these skills, and these influential networks. And we do know from experience, and I've done this for 6 consecutive cohorts, that people take away mainly 3 things out of the program: the connections, the content that leads them to insight, and impact that they can have because of this and through something we call the work-based project, which is a practical output. So let me just share a little bit of each. Firstly, the connections. We start with the cohort, and right now we're finalizing the 2026 cohort, and we're only 2 weeks out of doing so, give or take a few days. So in 12 days we'll be able to put up the little slide about 2026 cohort, but right now you're seeing 8 out of the 63 of 2025 to really illustrate 2 points: the caliber of this group. You can just scan titles and sectors and see that, I think, and the diversity of this group. So what we do when we put together this cohort is that we ensure balance between sectors, which you can see on the left-hand side, and that we really seek diversity of perspectives and experiences and expertise, because we know that this is what leaders talk about at the end: the new views, the new ideas they got from seeing things through different eyes, and the cross-pollination of thinking that happens when you got this diverse group united in their joint intention to deepen and broaden their understanding of Asia and Asia-Australia engagement. This cohort that you see, just represented through these 8, actually has a part of itself in the virtual space. So I'm mentioning this especially today because I know a lot of people are joining from Asia, and some might be joining from regional rural Australia as well. And this cohort is designed for you. So the idea that we have harnessed, and that's now become one of the most popular offerings of the Asian Leaders Program, is to join us virtually if you're part of those 2 groups, so that you have those direct connections between Australia and Asia. This is a facilitated experience, and for the first time this year, it actually includes an event in region, drawing on our 100+ alumni, local experts, and of course, the leaders that are part of this hub. So you have these 2 cohorts together making up the 2026 cohort, and they take similar or parallel journeys that intersect throughout. So let me show you the program journey. This is the nuts and bolts. So in essence, it's over 9 months, and it's organized in clusters over the days that you see. It's approximately 10 days for the in-person hub, 8 days for the virtual hub. These learning journeys, they cover an incredible depth and breadth. And I'm just going to stop very briefly on 3 main points. The start, Foundation Week. This is exploring Asia in all its diversity and complexity through many lenses, from history to politics, from business to arts to people engagement. And if you're in the virtual hub, this is the only event that you're accessing by live stream, but that is also facilitated by a virtual hub facilitator who will engage you in discussions. Some of the speakers will hop straight off the podium in Melbourne and straight into a discussion with you. The second one I wanted to highlight is the Canberra Summit. It is really the centerpiece of the program. Immersive and intensive focuses on Australia's relationship with the region. And if you're joining the program, you'll meet the people who lead that and shape that. So politicians, senior public servants, diplomats, and others across sectors. the graduation is the last part, and that's where the expert voices are the leaders themselves. And you might notice this red thread called the Workplace Project. That is a practical Asia-focused initiative that leaders choose themselves. At application, we ask, do you have an idea for this? And throughout the program, we help you harness this through small group discussions, and you also use that to draw down direct benefit for yourself, your organization, and sector. And then this is presented at graduation, which is an incredibly exciting time. Now, you might be sitting here going, I'm actually interested. How will this run? Exactly when and where? So here's something that we prepared earlier. If you're joining us in person, you'll find that your program is in these cities, as well as with virtual elements, which is when you intersect with a virtual cohort. We are dropping that as a downloadable file into the chat now. You can take a quick screenshot, or you can email us and you can get this image. If you're in the virtual hub, you have a very similar learning journey, which goes over 8 days and includes that in-region event that I mentioned before. You can opt to tag on the Canberra Summit and join us in Australia and meet in person, or join us in Canberra if you're already in Australia. And this is not at the same time, so you could potentially conceivably do both. Again, that's dropped in the file as a downloadable, dropped in the chat as a downloadable file. Lastly, the insights, so the content leading to insights, and the impact. A short cut to talking about the content is to show you some of our speakers and to let you know that there is about 100 speakers coming to you. However, it's not a series of speakers. It is a curated learning program around 4 key themes, which you can find on our website. We are very lucky as Australia's National Centre for Asia Capability to be able to convene incredible leaders, leading voices, people who know, think tankers and academics, people who do, although they do too, people who are leading in business and politics and across arts and creative industries. Incredibly important, all of those perspectives. This slide does not show the diversity. It shows just one day in our Canberra Summit, just so you get a feel for who might come and speak. And you might notice, if you're really looking at it, that some of them are alumni now in influential positions, kindly supported the program. The last thing I'll say is also that we really work hard to ensure it's not just speaking at you, but speaking with you. And they do so with openness and real energy, because they know the Asialink Leaders Program, many of them. And we make sure that you also get some social events and organic interactions to support you. What will you take out of this if you are to join us? Well, different for everyone, but people say, look, I came with an idea, I shaped it into a workplace project. We got 1,250 of these. Every leader, alumni have one. 10 of these on your slide now, kindly shared by those leaders. This is obviously a tangible outcome that you continue to pursue throughout and often after the program. But the bigger outcome is a new way of thinking. This is what leaders report back to us. So we might hear some more of that in our next conversation. But I hope this has given you a sense of what the Asialink Leaders Program is and does, and how it works. And if you have more questions, I look forward to getting them and also responding to them offline. I think the best thing to do to bring you that experience and a bit more about this program is to move to a conversation with our alumnus, one of our many alumni and one who is in region. So let me introduce to you first Ken Ooi, who is a 2022 Asialink Leaders alumni. His work is as a corporate counsel and in-house legal advisor to a tech company based in Singapore, but of course he's here in his capacity as an alumni. Ken has a successful career as both a qualified lawyer and a chartered accountant, and also fits in pro bono advocacy, and has been a Singapore resident for about 3 years. And in fact, the program followed you to Singapore, Ken. And we might hear some more about that. But first of all, a warm welcome to you. And I'm going to just dive right in. You are there in this dynamic Asia hub that is Singapore. So from where you're sitting, what shifts or signals are you paying close attention to, and you think we should too, as we look ahead to the year? Over to you.
Hi, Lotta. Lovely to see you again. I think some of the trends that I've been seeing are quite similar to the things that Catherine spoke about in her introduction. So she spoke about geopolitical risks, and I can definitely see that sitting where I am, strategic hedging. So I can see across Southeast Asia, governments are not decoupling as such, but they're definitely diversifying. So we're seeing governments working with the US, China, Japan, Europe, and not putting all their eggs into one basket. So I think that's a really interesting trend, and it's something that Singapore has been very good at over the last couple of decades, and it'll be really interesting to see how that develops within the region going forward with all the geopolitical change. The second thing I see is opportunities. So we spoke about infrastructure investment and technological development. There's definitely a lot of long-term investments that are being made in this area, a lot of bets on digital infrastructure, logistics, ports. So these are long-term trends. They're not just short-term ideas. So that's another thing that I'll be paying attention to. And I think another thing that really matters is competition. So we spoke about how it's becoming a more competitive environment. There's definitely a bit of a gap here when it comes to talent and AI with the way things are moving. So sitting in Singapore, which is a country where there isn't a lot of natural resources, and the real key asset here is talent and attracting talent. I think a really interesting area to watch will be how demand for talent shifts and how things move. But in my mind, there's always going to be a scarcity of talent for people who can operate cross-culturally, who can navigate ambiguity, and who can translate strategy into execution, which are things that you can learn and develop through participation in the Asialink program.
Fantastic here, Ken. It really does, I think, validate some of the observations we heard earlier, and at the same time illustrates what it's like to have a leader in region just say, what does it look like on the ground? So thank you for sharing that with us. And on to your final point, which is that there's never not a need for people who develop their own cross-cultural capabilities. And you started this program 4 years ago. And if you think about your ambitions in Asia then, as you saw it from Australia, and the journey that you took through the program, how do you now think that the Asialink Leaders Program changed maybe the way you think or the way you operate in hindsight?
Yeah, so I think going into the program, I didn't really know what to expect, but coming out of it, it really, I feel, changed my mindset. So it wasn't a course that, a lot of the educational courses they've done in the past have been teaching you how to become an expert. But I feel that the Asialink program was something different to that. It was teaching you how to get more of a learner mindset. The content gave you exposure to so many leading academics, creatives, business leaders. So all these different areas that really push you to learn and get comfortable with unfamiliar contexts. So that's cultural issues, political issues, commercial issues, and hearing from leaders in each of these areas. So I found that was a really interesting way of changing my mindset. Confidence is the second thing I think I got out of the program. So not so much as in knowing Asia, but more having the confidence to navigate things that I don't know about Asia. And navigate unknowns is something that's a really powerful skill set to working internationally. So working with global teams, working in negotiations, working with people from different backgrounds, having that confidence and ability to navigate change is something that's been really useful.
That is fantastic. Go ahead.
Yep.
There might
And
be
then
one more.
thirdly, network. So having a network, you've mentioned this in your introduction previously, but having that network to draw on, I've found that really useful. So for those three things, I see them impact my work today. So I'm quite lucky to be in a regional role where I get to put into use some of those skills and use that network.
Fantastic to hear, Ken. And I know from experience that many of our leaders in Australia will call on their peers in Asia during travels and get the insights and get prepped and get connected. So it's great to hear. And of course, you being able to navigate the changing landscape is very helpful. You joined the Asialink Leaders Program in Australia. Then you got this global role in Singapore. So you had that unique program experience. You've been in a way in both hubs, in both contexts. Just want to invite one or two thoughts about what stood out for you about your program experience.
Yeah, on that on the virtual point, I found that really useful for me because I was doing a lot of travel. I was moving around a bit. There was fitting in work, life, and everything into doing the course as well made things quite easy. And there was also the graduation in Singapore, which I got to participate in, which I really enjoyed, along with traveling to Canberra for the summit, which you mentioned earlier. They were the key highlights for me when it came to doing it both virtually and in person.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Ken. And that brings us to 5 minutes before session closing. And I got a lot of questions already. And we might just continue a little bit on the idea of connections. So what I'm doing is drawing on a theme that I see come through in the questions. But please post your questions now if you haven't already. We'll see how many we can get through. But my first question is, you talked about how people use the network. And from my perspective, having seen hundreds of leaders go through the program and engaging with that great alumni group, I see that it's not just during your program. I see over time that people use the connections as an extended brain's trust. Of course, for introductions, also for visibility of what's happening on the ground, which is really where you started us off, Ken. Is there anything in particular that you have noticed in building connections? Any connections that you made that has been very useful for you?
Yeah, so on things I've noticed, you mentioned this in your presentation as well about people being very passionate about Asia and being passionate about making a difference and positive change for their organizations and the country as well. That's a common theme that I've noticed for people that I've met who have gone through the program. They're all very passionate about what they do. They're all very passionate about making change and making a difference, both for their company, for Australia, and for themselves. And with 30 years of this program running, there's quite a few senior people that have gone through the program. So you've got this network of people who are a bit ahead of me that I can draw on for questions, for advice. That's a really useful thing to have.
Fantastic. And I know that that happens to you now, that people come to you for the same thing. From the Asialink Leaders Program.
One day, perhaps.
I absolutely am overwhelmed with all the wonderful questions that are coming in. I think I'm going to get to this one from VJ. Can you share more about the interview process and how candidates stand out? Well, the first thing I'll say is if you're interested, please apply. We're going to show some links and you're going to get them shortly after in an email. What we notice about the people who apply and the people who are successful is exactly what you said, Ken. There is a positivity. There is a real curiosity. I think Catherine Madford also mentioned this. And when I say ambition, it doesn't have to be, hard-nosed ambition, although we welcome that too. It's an ambition to do better together. So I think the Asialink Leaders Program, and I hope, brings Australians to think about learning from Asia and engaging and contributing where we can, engaging reciprocally. So I think that sort of respect of engagement and appreciation for each other is really something that I guess we look for with leaders. And some leaders come in with decades of experience in Asia, born in Asia maybe. Some leaders come in just starting out. Equally fine. We like that diversity too. But I think that what you've just said, Ken, about the way people approach things, that's really, it's really very true. And I think that people who are interested will find themselves among like-minded peers. Really different for them, I hope, but also very like-minded in what we want to achieve. And last question is about the workplace project. Ken, you were actually part of our program partner, Herbert Smith Freehills Kramer, at the time, which we are delighted to have an ongoing and long-term and supportive relationship with. So your project might have changed, but is there anything you can say about what the project meant to you at the time, maybe, or later?
Yeah, I think so. You mentioned diversity and the fact that everyone comes from different backgrounds. One of the things I really enjoyed about the program is hearing all the different projects that different people did and how they were looking to influence their companies and their organizations or their sectors. So for me personally, I was more focused on what I was hoping to achieve within my organization with my career. So it was more work related for me. But for others, it was as diverse as writing books about Asia. And there are some books out there that have been really excellent reads. And learning from those different workplace projects was something that I really got out of the program.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ken. And it's a collection of ambition and vision that we also really value, and everyone who sees it gets quite impressed by. Ken, thank you so much for sharing your experience today. And I hope for all of you listening that was valuable and helpful. And I'm going to finish off on this note, which is thank you. And go ahead and apply if you're interested or share with others. This is recorded and will be shared. We are 12 days out from closing applications. So it's a good time to get them in. We are 5.5 weeks from starting the program. And of course, we are here if you have any questions. My colleague, Tim McIntyre, and I in the first instance. But go ahead, go to our website, go and engage with us, email us. We'd love to hear from you. So on behalf of myself, the Asialink Leaders Program and Asialink, thank you, and we wish you all a happy Lunar New Year of the Firehorse ahead. All the best. Look forward to hearing from many of you.